Okay, this is the review of the 2021 Roland Garros final. For those who have not watched it yet, this is your chance to click away. 3, 2, 1. Now, Novak Djokovic, 19 Grand Slams, of which 2 French Opens, 3 US Opens, 5 Wimbledons, and 9 Australian Opens. Most weeks spent at world number 1. Only player aside from Rod Laver to have held all 4 Grand Slams at the same time, 2015-16 when he won 4 in a row, starting with the Wimbledon of 2015 and ending with French Open 2016. The only player to have won all 9 Masters 1000 tournaments twice or more. The only player ever to have won all 4 Grand Slams twice on all 4 surfaces. Rod Laver and Roy Emerson have done the same feat, that is, winning all 4 Grand Slams at least twice, but they have not done it on all 3 surfaces: hard court, grass, and clay. That said, these are statistics. Now let's talk more about Novak Djokovic, and then we'll get to the match. Novak Djokovic is the best at managing and constructing a match. He has essentially mastered the art of the 5-set match, the Grand Slam match. And I can say with a lot of confidence that he is the best at evolving his style according to his opponent, strategizing and adapting his game based on that. You do not get the feeling that he's going to lose a very, very important match easily or at all. Because even after he was down 2 sets to love today, similar to when he was down 2 sets to 1 back at the Australian Open of last year, 2020, against Dominic Thiem, you do not get the feeling that Djokovic is panicking. His demeanor projects calm, collectedness. Well, I made a word. I think it's a word. Calm, serene, in control. There's almost a not a lack of care, but a lack of tension, which he projects, which undoubtedly affects his opponent too. If you watch the match, the first set was tight. Second set was easily a massive steamrolling by Tsitsipas. Third, fourth were steamrolled by Djokovic, and the fifth was, again, a similar story. But still, staying with Djokovic, I have witnessed matches in which I am rooting for Djokovic, and I have witnessed matches in which I'm rooting against Djokovic. So the common theme with both of them is similar to something I already mentioned. You never get the feeling that he's going to lose the extremely critical moments of any match, unless he's completely outmatched on the day. So last year's French Open final comes to mind when you think of examples of when he's out of it or he's not there fully for whatever reason. It might well be the contribution of his opponent which contributes to him not being there. But if Djokovic is healthy and he is somewhat able to play even 40% of his game, he has access to it, you know that he can rise to the occasion more often than not. So let's get to the match today a little more, and then I'll finish off with a little more on Djokovic's the significance of his win today. As for statistics, 5-set match, Djokovic wins for the first time in his career, coming back from love to 2 sets to love down, and then he comes back and wins 3 sets in a row. It's the first time that has happened for him in a Grand Slam final. Now, the statistics themselves: aces, Tsitsipas 14, Djokovic 5. First serve percentage, 68 for Djokovic, 62 for Tsitsipas. First serve points 1, 78 for Djokovic, 67 for Tsitsipas. 53% second serve points 1 for Djokovic, 50 for Tsitsipas. Break points 1, 5 out of 16 for Djokovic. Tsitsipas, 3 out of 8. Winners, 56 for Djokovic, 61 for Tsitsipas. Unforced errors, 41 for Djokovic, 44 for Tsitsipas. Total points won, 164. Djokovic, 147. Tsitsipas. All in all, it is a very clean final. This is incredible in terms of quality if you really look at it, because it suggests that both players force a lot of errors, which usually indicates a very high level of play. Unforced errors are less than winners for both players. So a great job done by both in that department. Aces and first serve percentage was relevant a lot more during the early portion of the match. Similar to the Nadal match, at least the first 3 sets of the Nadal match, Djokovic did not have access to a bulk of his serving power. He was, as the match progressed, another example of Djokovic's adaptability. Djokovic reduced the speed on his first serve and went for accuracy instead. He was employing this tactic of serving out wide from the ad court to Tsitsipas' backhand so that he could remove Tsitsipas from the court, leaving ample room for Djokovic to either hit a cross-court forehand to Tsitsipas' forehand or a down-the-line backhand, again to Tsitsipas' forehand side, which would mean that to return the ball, Tsitsipas would have to run all the way from the left side of the court to the right side of the court. This was a common theme for the last 2 sets of the match. That's one common thread. A difference from the Nadal match, at least from the first half of the Nadal match for Djokovic, was that in this match, Djokovic was not abusing the drop shot. He was strategically using the drop shot at important moments. It was not as if Djokovic couldn't hang with Tsitsipas. It did not seem that Djokovic's drop shots were necessitated out of Djokovic's inability to hang in a baseline rally with Tsitsipas. Now, set by set, throughout the past 2 matches, including this one theme has been in the Nadal match for Djokovic that Djokovic was unable to consolidate his breaks. Very often he would break and then he would be immediately broken. So that was something that Djokovic, I think, identified going into the match and tried to stem. The first set itself, probably the highest quality of tennis in that set on average. Both players were very energetic, sharp on their serves. Both were close to their serving best. Tsitsipas was generating a lot of winners. He was not relenting under the pressure that Djokovic was trying to apply on him. The ground strokes were sharp. The angles were acute often. Djokovic could not produce a lot of winners in that first set. In fact, there were many instances of Djokovic being off balance during some of the rallies. Of course, Djokovic is very good at masking that or making up for that during the same rally. It's actually incredible because he has this ability to be completely off balance while hitting a shot. Usually he slumps over when he's hitting a forehand, but the topspin on the ball and the upward trajectory of the ball causes him to get enough time to balance himself and also costs the opponent enough time because the ball is in the air for longer. Another example of this tactic was the frequent use of the lob, the defensive lob, not when the opponent is at the net, but when the opponent is at the baseline as well. So the response to a serve or even to a good ground stroke from Djokovic was a high lob, which was directed usually at Tsitsipas's backhand. The high backhands, no matter how good your backhand is for a single-hander, it is a difficult shot to hit, especially with potency. So Djokovic bought a lot of time for himself. These are traits which were more and more visible the longer the match went on. So this is another exemplification of Djokovic adapting to his opponent and adapting to the match. And I think also common with the Musetti match that Djokovic had. After being 2 sets to love down, Djokovic goes to the locker room with his bag, I think, to change a tire and also perhaps to just collect himself mentally and gather his thoughts and analyze his strengths and weaknesses and maybe not manufacture, but gather his strength as well. And that was done by him today as well. And when he returned, he was a completely different player. And you can see that, which is, again, a common thread. Whenever Djokovic goes away, you know he's coming back a better player. Very rarely has it been that he's been completely steamrolled. A straight sets Djokovic loss in a Grand Slam final. I'm trying to think of examples of when that has happened. I believe he lost to Federer at the U.S. Open in 2007, which is almost 15 years ago, almost 14 years ago. And I think the Wimbledon 2013 final against Andy Murray was also a straight set loss. But he just doesn't lose in straight sets unless you're talking of 2020 French Open final when he was abusing the drop shot, which was not the case today. So it's very difficult to beat Djokovic very easily, to dominate him for 3 sets, which is a part of another narrative, that being that the big three, and most specifically Djokovic, they know how to play best of 5 sets tennis. The mentality, the strategy, the conservation of energy. Because if you look at it on the surface, if you compare older players with younger players should have more energy, biologically speaking, if you consider that given the level of tennis, given the level of athleticism that is on display on the tour, and if you take training as a constant for everybody, you would think that the younger players, by virtue of being younger, would have more energy to be able to perform better in these best of 5 matches the longer they go. But as we've seen in many Grand Slam finals, be it Nadal versus Thiem, French Open finals 1 and 2, or Medvedev versus Djokovic, 2021 Australian Open, or Djokovic Thiem, Australian Open 2020, or even today, French Open 2021, Djokovic versus Tsitsipas. The thing that is evident is that it is very difficult for the younger players, and I stress younger, they're not teenagers. The longer the match goes for the next gen, the Medvedev, Tsitsipas, Shapovalov, Thiem, Zverev, these players, it is more and more difficult for them to maintain or improve their level. Whereas for the big three, it is a common trait to raise their level the longer the match goes. So that indicates toward experience being a massive factor, and also strategy. So Djokovic more than anybody else, because I also believe he has the record for most 5-set match wins on the Grand Slam level. Djokovic just knows to conserve his energy and when to give up on a set and when not to give up on a set. The commentators today were talking about when in the second set should Djokovic give up on the set and try for the third set. Djokovic never truly completely gave up, but I believe he knew when he was down by 3 games that it was time to think ahead. And that is something that comes with experience, but also instinct. You have to know your body enough, you have to know your mind, and you have to be able to analyze your opponent's level of play. And also be aware that at some point, if you give yourself enough chances, and if you ask enough questions of your opponent, the opponent's incredibly high level, Tsitsipas' level today in the first 2 sets, is going to go down at some point. And you have to earn the situation where the level of your opponent decreases so you can stomp on that opportunity. You can, sorry, not stomp, you can make the most of that opportunity, capitalize on that opportunity, and stomp on your opponent in a figurative sense. You can take the opportunity that is offered to you. And that strategy played a significant role even today. Like I mentioned before, it was a major factor in Djokovic's comeback finals victory at the Australian Open as well. Something that differentiates Djokovic from even Nadal and Federer is that he does not appear stressed. He does not appear to be overwhelmed by any situation at all, which is evident even in some of his losses. So that is okay, of course, but the more significant is how he composes himself for his victories. Even being down 2-0, he did not appear frazzled or frustrated. He just appeared to be in a zone where he focused on the job at hand, which was to tackle Tsitsipas's storm, which was dominating the match for the first two sets. And then Djokovic could easily breeze through after getting the first break in the third set and then getting two breaks in the fourth set. Well, it was a process which started with the third set break that he got. Djokovic knew that he was present in the match. He slowly built himself up in the match. And that is something that he is the best at. And that is something that a lot of people can look at as an example of how to not give up and how to be relevant, how to stay even within touching distance of becoming relevant in a match. It speaks to Djokovic's training, his mental training, his visualization, all those factors, and his lifestyle, his diet, which he changed multiple times, but most significantly in 2011 when he found himself and announced his presence on the tour in a big way with that 41 match winning streak, or was it 44? All these things said, the first set was very high quality. There was no telling who was going to win. Djokovic had set point on his serve, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But Tsitsipas also had a match point. Djokovic broke at 5-5 and then was serving for the match, but Tsitsipas broke back in the first set. And then we had the tiebreaker, where Tsitsipas had a 4-0 advantage. And before you knew it, Djokovic neutralized that advantage. And that is also another example of Djokovic remaining relevant in a match long enough to be able to answer when the situation is suitable. He does not relinquish control even though the situation might tell him that you should probably relinquish some bit of control and plan ahead. He just doesn't give up that easy. That said, now deficiencies of Djokovic, even in this match that he has won. A lot of people will say, and maybe even Djokovic will say, that he played the best clay court tournament of his entire career. The peaks were very high. The high levels of his play were very high, indeed. But I believe it is more a testament to his shot selection getting better throughout a match. Not as in absolute terms, because he learns from his mistakes in the same match. That is incredible. That is something that also makes him very, very difficult to beat on any given day, even on his worst day. Djokovic is not the best player at the net, which is, how do you say, accentuated by his seeming inability to put away a smash confidently. It has become more and more visible time and time again against Nadal day before yesterday and against Tsitsipas today. He misses overheads on a regular basis, and it has cost him probably opportunities to close out matches sooner than he otherwise would. His volleys are great, but they also sometimes suffer. The shot selection often, when, for example, Tsitsipas on more than one occasion today tried the drop shot. It was not the tactic for Tsitsipas. The drop shot tactic did not work nearly as well as it did for Djokovic. I already mentioned how Djokovic made it into a surprise element rather than a go-to option for him, which also helped Djokovic. But I was speaking of a particular play that Tsitsipas made, which was the drop shot. So Djokovic would come toward the net, and he has the down the line channel open to stroke a winner away. But he would choose the cross court. He has reached the ball in time and he has the option. And sometimes, instead of taking the easy route or the logical route, he would pick the cross court, knowing full well that the 6'2" Tsitsipas is easily capable with his wingspan to reach the cross court, reaching to Tsitsipas's backhand, and Tsitsipas will hit the shot, the volley into the open court. And this happens quite a few times. So it's not as if Djokovic is inhuman or superhuman. Djokovic is very much human, but he's just so calm and so self-aware, which helps him control his emotions and reach his goal of winning the match as as a multi-layered goal. He knows how to go through his ups and downs and counters them with the lull periods the best. Let me explain. Every match has lull periods. So when Tsitsipas was playing out of his mind and Djokovic was playing pretty well as well, not a lot of errors, and actually hitting his spots. The match was at its peak from a quality perspective. The first set. The second set, Tsitsipas was capitalizing on the momentum. He was getting breaks. Djokovic was yelling at his box and going through doing Djokovic things, which he needs to do in order to find himself during a match. In the second set of a Grand Slam final, you would usually think that, hey, it's too late, what are you doing? But with Djokovic, it's different. It just is. And then Tsitsipas' level dropped, and Djokovic came back from the locker room a different player, as I mentioned before. And during these lull periods when you know that Tsitsipas' energy is probably going down and maybe he's feeling some butterflies in his stomach or getting a little bit nervous because it's a Grand Slam final, Djokovic has the task of finding his game, finding his best game. He hasn't found it yet, so he's not going to steamroll through Tsitsipas right away. He has to find that bit of motivation, bit of confidence through his game, through an outcome. Sorry, and through an outcome, so that he's able to find that cornerstone from which he can build his presence in the match. But in those lull moments, when both players are trying to grasp at outcomes, at positive outcomes for themselves, respective positive outcomes, Djokovic capitalizes the most. When in any match, when neither player is operating at the peak of their abilities, which is quite a significant chunk of every match, Djokovic has the ability to take initiative and win a significant amount of points. He can string together these streaks of 8 points out of 10 or 7 points out of 9. A lot of these instances in the lull periods of matches, which turn matches on their heads all the time. And this is a pattern in Djokovic matches, even more so this tournament. I believe that Djokovic's peaks rival his best play on clay courts ever. But this is not the best that he's played from a shot selection perspective going into a match. This is the best he has played from the perspective of adapting to a match, adapting to an opponent, adapting to a situation. Yes. So it just shows his experience, his superhuman mental strength, and his inability or his refusal to panic in these extremely mentally and physically demanding situations. He was 11 years older than Tsitsipas, and in the fifth set, he was the more energetic of the two. He smelled blood by getting the break in the fifth set, and he rolled with it. He closed out the match, which was something that he has not been extremely successful at doing. Like I said, there was a constant sub-narrative of will Djokovic consolidate his break. He did in the fifth set, and he served out the match. In the second time of calling, Djokovic successfully won the championship point and won the French Open for the second time in his career. He adds another chapter to his illustrious, unrivaled career in many ways. So it just goes to show how stellar of an athlete he is. Speaking about Tsitsipas a little bit, the first two sets were incredible. Not from the perspective of Djokovic, but rather from the perspective of Tsitsipas. He was rather so dialed in for the first two sets that if it was not Djokovic, you would bet that he's going to win the match because he was so ready. He was hungry. He was sharp with his ground strokes. Everything that he touched was turning into gold. He was besting Djokovic in shot selection, in hitting through the ball, finding the perfect shot to reply to Djokovic's returns of serve, and even himself when Tsitsipas was receiving Djokovic's serve. Everything was going in his favor, but not because of luck. It was because he was commanding play. The third and fourth set, his energy dropped a little bit, and he could not return to the same level that he possessed during the first two sets. But on the whole, he actually has nothing to be ashamed of. This is only a stepping stone towards a very likely extremely successful career for Stefanos Tsitsipas. We will wait and see how long it takes for him, but unlike Dominic Thiem, sorry to single him out, but he is probably the actual mega superstar in the making because Thiem is already 27 years old, I believe. He does not have as much time as Tsitsipas. I believe it's a good example. Thiem is and not from a career legacy achievement perspective. But Team is the Federer of the next gen. Team is the Federer to Tsitsipas's Nadal and Tsitsipas's Djokovic in terms of age difference. Team is much older. He's just considered part of the next gen because none of them, as a collective unit, won Grand Slams until last year. So they're just clubbed together. But Djokovic, Nadal, and most significantly Federer, have been fending off multiple generations. Federer is not even in the generation of Nadal and Djokovic. So that's the logic there. But anyways, Tsitsipas has the most time to improve, and his game is at the highest level among the people that he can call his contemporaries, including all the people I've already mentioned earlier: Zverev, Shapovalov, Auger-Aliassime, Kyrgios, Team, and a few others that I might be missing. Musetti, there you go, and Sinner, Yannick Sinner, and Alcaraz from Spain, and Stuger. I might be saying there's a teenage Swiss player who was playing in Geneva, who was the hometown favorite after Federer dropped out, lost to Andujar. Anyway, so Tsitsipas, things are looking up, and he can definitely draw from this experience. But the major statement from this tournament is Djokovic beat Nadal, beat Tsitsipas, won French Open, unlocked a significant achievement in his ridiculous career. And it just sets the stage. What's going to happen at Wimbledon? What's going to happen at the U.S. Open? And where is this major narrative of Grand Slam victories, the GOAT race, all of those things going to lead to him? Going to lead him to? We'll see. And it is a significant achievement. All congratulations to the champion, to the undisputed champion at the moment, the world number one, rightfully so. And let's see. It's a very interesting. It's a very interesting time to be a tennis fan. Until next time, this is Duncan Lievi, and I will probably see you for some of the matches at Wimbledon. Cheers.